Quick introduction. Hi, I'm McCarty. I'm the program scientist for the Commercial Smallsat Data Acquisition program, as well as a program scientist in the Weather and Atmospheric Dynamics focus area. I've been at headquarters about a year now. And so you may have, if you've worked with CSDA before, you probably are familiar with me. I was the project scientist at Goddard and part of the Spire evaluation initially. So I've been with CSDA since the beginning. Now I'm at headquarters, and we are here to do a proposers teleconference on the ROSES-2022 A.44 element, which is entitled Commercial Smallsat Data Scientific Analysis. So, to give you a background on the CSDA program, the Commercial Smallsat Data Acquisition program, the CSDA program was established to identify, evaluate, and acquire data from commercial sources that support NASA's Earth science research and applications goals. It was formed in recognition of the potential impact that commercial small satellite data and constellations may have in encouraging and enabling an efficient approach to Earth system science and applications development. The pilot actually was established in 2017. The evaluations for the first on-ramp basically concluded around 2020, and 2020 is when we transitioned from a pilot to a sustained program. The program objectives, the objectives for CSDA in general are to establish a continuous and repeatable process to on-ramp new commercial data vendors, to enable sustained use of purchased data for broader use and dissemination by Earth scientific community, to ensure long-term data preservation, access, and distribution of purchased data and long-term access for scientific reproducibility, and to coordinate with other U.S. governments, agencies, and international partners on the evaluation and scientific use of these commercial data. Just a friendly reminder, please make sure you're muted. We will save all questions until the end of the briefing. So the main purpose of this briefing is to give you essentially an overview and summary of this A.44 CSDSA ROSES element for you and potentially answer any questions at the end for those who may be interested in proposing to this element. Again, the text is online and on NSpire, so this is really a pretty high-level summary of that text and really hammering a few key points about basically with the structure and the nuances of this this call. So in that sense, please remember that there is also the online solicitation, which has more detail, and we'll go into more detail than this. But it really breaks down into three specific bullet points that I'm going to discuss here today. One is the data holdings. So this solicitation focuses on the use of data that has been evaluated, and that's a key point there, evaluated as part of the CSDA program and incorporated into the CSDA standard data holdings. The second purpose is to basically solicit proposals that utilize commercial satellite data acquired by the CSDA program in the context of research, analysis, and applications of NASA's Earth Science Division. So we will have a section that specifically addresses essentially the programmatic relevance of this program. And finally, to explain a little bit of the two-step process that we will be using for this element. It is a mandatory process, but it is also a non-binding process, and we will talk about the details of that later as well. So to start with, we'll start with the data. So this data is focusing on essentially standard data holdings of CSDA. So what does that mean? Please refer to section 3 of the solicitation. Explicitly, the slide represents the data holdings of CSDA, which is available in a table on that link. You will be able to access that link both within the solicitation as well as these slides will be made available after the fact. I will basically briefly walk through that table. I don't plan on going through every single specific point, but I will just quickly touch on what is being available. And I'm going through it essentially on a vendor by vendor basis. The first vendor that I will touch is Planet. The data that is available is the Planet Scope archive, which is available from roughly 2014 to the present. The Rapid Eye archive, which is available from roughly 2009 to 2019 when the constellation was shuttered. And then limited holdings from the SkySat SkySat satellite collection as well. You will notice that for PlanetScope and RapidEye, you would get that data through the Planet Explorer, which again, you can go to the website to find more details. And those aren't really tasks, they're always on. So, but you can basically get new data from that. But for SkySat, that data is available through the SDX tool that CSDA maintains, but PIs cannot submit new orders for data from those satellites. So that would be limited specifically to the data holdings that are on hand. The data from the GSS Science Catalog from Spire Global are also available. This includes basically the all GNSS Earth science data. And again, this includes, so this is basically radio occultation, grazing angle reflectometry, grazing angle reflectometry sea ice product, which is a level 2 derived product from the grazing angle measurements. And there's actually more in this table, but the point I want to make here is that these data are either available via SDX or by request through CSDA. And essentially we get the whole catalog, and so that whole catalog comes in under the standard latency as explained in the EULA. So the data are essentially available. They're not, but again, they're not really tasked, so you're not really getting specific orders from them. It's just the data that is delivered to us from Spire. So RO, grazing angle reflectometry, the reflectometry sea ice product, the grazing angle reflectometry altimetry product, which does ice and ocean reflectometry. We also have the this is so one thing that is new in the terms of the collections for this call is the bistatic radar collections. So we have essentially from their traditional reflectometry satellites, the GNSS-R. We do have level 1 bistatic radar cross-section products from them, so level 1A and level 1B. And we'll come back to that too. This is all in alphabetical order, so it's a little out of sync, but in terms of the way the observations are classified, there are ionospheric profiles. I will point back to relevance, a lot of times space weather. GNSS has a lot of space weather applicability, but that is generally a heliophysics phenomenon in the context of NASA's Science Mission Directorate. So if you were going to be doing anything with this, you need to make sure that you are Earth science relevant, because this is an Earth science program. Magnetometer data, similar. There are a few, very few raw IF collections that Spire has provided us, raw intermediate frequency. Those are available by request, and there is a PDF on the website that kind of explains where the observations are located for those. The satellite POD and satellite attitude, there again, satellite positioning information, we have that. Scintillation information, we have that. Total electron content, we have that. But please, again, I'm making the note that you need that this is an Earth science relevant call and not a heliophysics call, so just be aware. And then finally, two more. This gets back to the grazing angle products, an ocean wind speed and mean surface slope level 2 product derived from their traditional GNSS reflectometry instruments that are available from basically May 1st onward 2021, and soil moisture products as well over the land from the traditional reflectometry as well. The soil moisture has not been incorporated into the SDX tool. The ocean winds have, so the soil moisture tools products are available currently only by request, but we have committed to providing any request access requests as needed. And again, for all of these, and I should have said this already, and I'll say it again. Please do make sure that you go read the licensing that is available on that website, because that really explains the scope of the data and how you can use it. Maxar, formerly Digital Globe, we have satellites data available from Worldviews 1, 2, and 3, GeoEye, QuickBird, and Iconos. Iconos dating back to the late 90s. That is all available through the NextView license, and new orders can be submitted for that. Worldview 4, we do have a relatively limited number of selections. This does say that new orders can be submitted. I'm actually not positive on that. I feel like they cannot, but long and short, that is actually available under the Maxar EULA, and that was data that was evaluated through the initial evaluation of Maxar, but is not privy to the NextView license. The DSESS instrument from Teledyne Brown on the space station, essentially a hyperspectral imager that is available. That is available from 2018 to the present. You can submit new orders. That's through the Teledyne Brown T-Cloud host interface, and that is subject to its own EULA. DSESS is a unique case in that it has fallen under CSDA's essentially responsibility and purview, but it was not officially evaluated under the first on-ramp because it came in through essentially a non-traditional method. It was not, it's part of our data holdings, but it was basically came through human spaceflight and the space station. And we were just the natural person to take this data set on. And finally, EarthDem from the Polar Geospatial Center is another non-traditional, non-standard in the sense that it wasn't brought on through the evaluation. It is subject to the NextView license because it does have and is a derived product from Maxar data. So it is fundamentally connected to that license and under this similar restriction, but it will be made available. It's basically CSDA is also taking responsibility for that, and we have determined that we will allow that data to be part of the solicitation. So it's on that table. That table is the official master list, and so it is part of the collections for this call. This is a map, a distribution map I got just recently of the EarthDem data. If you looked on the SDX tool, which is how CSDA is distributing it, you would see far less data, but we have essentially committed to making the EarthDem data available as much as can be, which is essentially 60 to 60, 60 south to 60 north with this level, and this is the level of frequency that exists right now. In a density map. A couple notes on the EarthDem data. All existing EarthDem strips and mosaics are slated to be released via CSDA within the next couple of years, 2023 and 24. What we will do, since it is not all transferred in hand, is essentially after selections are made, while we are establishing the grants and going through that process, we'll essentially use areas of interest from selected basically the selected proposals to prioritize their transfer so that we can make sure that any selected calls, we get the data in the hands of the funded projects as quickly as possible. The DEM strip acquisition time ranges from 2007 to 2022. The mosaics are a composite of all data processed before September 2021. Area with a density of greater than 2 essentially is more likely to have high quality data. The new satellite acquisitions will target gaps in coverage, but many existing gaps are areas that are basically hard to do because of persistent cloud cover or competition for taskings. So they are less likely to be filled quickly. So I really would emphasize that there should probably be a prioritization of existing measurements versus ones that need to be filled in. You can get more information on the data set through the EarthDem site at the Polar Geospatial Center. Now that's kind of the quick summary and overview of the data. Again, please refer to the solicitation. It does have pretty much all of this information, or at least links pointing towards all of this information, with the slight exception of we did provide a little bit more information for the EarthDem here, which is why we are recording this. So on to the next section, the purpose of this program and essentially the relevance. It is to solicit projects that utilize this data from CSDA in the context of the research analysis and applications of the Earth Science Division. So this is a really key point here. Programmatic scope is that this is broad, right? This is all of ESD. This is all of our RNA and applied sciences programs. We solicit anything that is applicable to these research and applications efforts. Consideration should be given to how CSDA will provide new or supplemental scientific knowledge or capabilities beyond the work being performed under existing Earth science focus areas and programs. So there really is a programmatic desire for these projects to get new information content out of commercial data and illustrate how that's going to happen and how that will feed towards the focus areas versus something that may already be in place and being performed under the focus areas themselves and the various other ROSES elements. There's a very explicit requirement for these, which is a program or focus area self-declaration. As part of this Inspire's cover page in the submission process, proposals are required to provide the primary and optionally a secondary focus area or program component within ESD to which they are relevant. This declaration will be used to basically for the programmatic categorization of each proposal. Research that is interdisciplinary or relevant to multiple focus areas and or focus areas or programs are acceptable. Research is acceptable through basically an interdisciplinary approach, but and I have a typo here, primary area of relevance must be declared. So for anybody, there is no select multiple options here. You have the choice. You have the opportunity to select one primary, and that will be used for classification in the step 1 process, as we will discuss further. But a secondary will be used for us in a programmatic sense. The programmatic self-declaration must match the corresponding relevance narrative in the science, technology, and management sections of both the step 1 and step 2 proposal. Essentially, as you would in any NASA proposal and any ROSES generally scientific proposal, you would need to make your relevance, basically argue your relevance. In this case, you need to declare the program areas or focus areas to which you are relevant, and then provide the corresponding relevance to strengthen that, and that is an evaluation criteria. This is the list of all the programs. If you course, I'm not going to go through them, but essentially they line up with table A.1, the table or the information in ROSES-2022 A.1 or Science Research Overview. This is essentially the structure of the research areas that exist at NASA, and you can find more information on each program areas by visiting their websites and their programmatic information and various technical documents. So the point here is that each project will need to declare where it fits into this, and then make that narrative, explain that justification and narrative and as part of the narrative in the STM section of the proposal. Finally, this will utilize a mandatory non-binding two-step process. So I'm going to basically describe the two-step process here. Some programs have used it for a while, like land use, land cover change, land cover, land use change, but others have not. I had never actually, in my days as a researcher prior to coming to headquarters, ever participated in a two-step proposal process. So this is going to just basically describe the process. Since the scope of this element is broad, since it is all of ESD wide, there is a desire to streamline the process for both the benefit of the applicants and for the benefit of those of us at headquarters on the other side of the process. To streamline this process, we're using a mandatory non-binding two-step proposal process. It is mandatory in the sense that all proposals must submit a step 1 proposal for consideration for selection by the due date. So the step 1 due date is the 18th, I believe. It's at the end of the slide deck. It's also in the solicitation and on Inspires. You must submit a step 1 proposal to be able to submit a step 2 proposal. But it is non-binding in that the result you will get from the step 1 proposal will essentially be an encouraging statement. We will basically score it either encouraged for submission or discouraged for submission for a step 2 proposal. So that's all that will come out of that. But basically it's non-binding. If you are discouraged coming out of step 1, you're still able to submit a step 2 proposal if you feel that discouragement was that came through that process would be fundamentally different than the result you get out of the step 2 step. So I'm going to talk a little bit in detail of each step in each process. Step 1 process, the structure, content, and format is laid out in section 4.1.1 of the solicitation. I'm not going to go through the details of what's required there. It's pretty clearly laid out, I think. After submission, step 1 proposals will be reviewed internally by NASA internally to NASA by CSDA in coordination with relevant programmatic representatives to determine whether a proposed research project is considered sufficient scientific merit and programmatic relevance to be competitive in step 2. So essentially, internal to headquarters, I'm going to work with the focus area leads and the program managers and any designees that are determined from there within to basically go through and perform this encourage, discourage step. Step 1 review process will also consider topical diversity across CSD. Again, since this is a broad umbrella and a broad scope, we are also trying to make sure that we are encouraging the use of these data through a wide variety of different projects across the Earth Science Division. Step 1 proposals will then either be given the scoring, and the scoring will get back to the PI, and no individualized feedback beyond encourage or discourage will be provided for the step 1 proposal. So the step 1 proposal is a shorter proposal. If you are encouraged to continue submission, the step 2 proposal is essentially a longer version of that proposal. The step 2 proposal must contain the same scientific objectives as their corresponding step 1 proposals, but give more detail. So essentially they must line up. It's just providing essentially more of a detail. And it's much more akin to a standard ROSES submission at this point. The structure, content, and format is laid out in the solicitation in section 4.1.3. The step 2 proposals will then be subject to external peer review by panel, so they will go through the standard peer review process, or generally that is used by headquarters to evaluate ROSES proposals. The structure of the panels will be determined based on the programmatic scope and number of proposals received. So once we have our final submissions, we have to formulate the panels. How you formulate that panels is generally an exercise of making sure you have basically all the programmatic areas covered that you need, as well as often have to divide into sub panels to handle just volume. The peer review process will be followed by a programmatic review of the proposal. So essentially the results of the peer review go to headquarters, and headquarters makes their final assessment and selection. So I'm sorry, I should have taken off that top bullet. Ignore that top line. So this is just a summary of the key information. The expected budget for the first year of award and each subsequent year is on the order of $3.2 million. Number of new awards anticipated is 17 to 22. You can do the math to see what that kind of equates to per year per proposal. These are 2-year proposals. The original commercial data analysis call that was in 2020, I believe, was 18 months. I actually surveyed those who are funded under that project because I thought the 18-month timeline was a bit unique. Even 2 years is still a bit unique, but a lot of the feedback basically with the desire to be a little bit quicker on the turnaround for these. We didn't want to go to a stand like the 3-year, which is a bit more standard for ROSES. We wanted to keep it a little shorter so that our turnaround could be quicker. But at the same time, there was a lot of feedback that 18 months was just a little too short, especially if you consider the time it takes to spin up a project. You know, if it takes you 6 months to really get moving, you only had a year of work. So 2 years was kind of a balance based on feedback. The step 1 proposals are due on the 18th of January. That feedback will come within essentially probably a couple of weeks of getting those submitted. I'll work with all the different focus areas to get their feedback. Step 2 proposals are due on the 23rd of March. And the points of contact here, these are all the programmatic types listed. I am the program scientist. I'm the chief point of contact, but Kathy Hibbard, Elfrida Hall, and Kevin Murphy should also be included in any correspondence. And so that's my last slide. Happy to take any questions at this point. I appreciate everyone's listening in. All right. Any questions? Feel free to either unmute, or I can see participants now. I don't see anything in the chat.
I have a question. This is Jennifer Haas.
Go ahead.
I'm concerned about the Earth data interface. So last time I used it, we ended up having to circumvent it and get the data packaged up for us by another entity. And I'm just wondering if that is more or less automatic approval authorization to look at the data sets in this proposal writing time period.
Can you clarify? So basically, you're wondering if you have to use the SDX tool during the proposal writing? Is that?
So a couple months ago, I went to the website and I thought that my old Earth data account would be sufficient. Mm-hmm. And I got into some kind of infinite loop on the website where it would ask me to submit an authorization request over and over. So I just wanted to clarify that the procedure, if I want to go now to look at the data sets now, that some of them are listed on Earth data, some of them are listed on SDX in that interface. And then when you go to SDX, it asks you to fill out an authorization request. And I'm just wondering, is that automatic? And then I fill out the authorization request and it'll be automatically approved to get authorization to look at the data set in the process of preparing this proposal.
Okay, yeah, so as far as I'm aware, unless it's changed, but I'm pretty sure it has not, the authorization process is not automatic for SDX. Basically, because it is US government wide, there's no easy way to automate that someone is in fact funded by a US government entity to confirm their eligibility for accessing the data. Essentially the EULAs require, for Spire, for example, US government funding. And so that has to be confirmed manually to provide that access. So that's
clear. You have to already have the funding to go look at the data set to prepare a proposal to get the funding.
The terms of the EULA is that the data is available to again, it depends by agency, but essentially, you have to oblige by the terms of the EULA, and in some cases, you are not funded by the government until you are selected. In this case, if you are funded for other projects, then there are in between ways to potentially get access to the data. But fundamentally, yes, you do have to. The terms of the EULA do restrict us to providing the data only to those who are funded by government organizations.
So that seems to imply to me that the proposals will be reviewed and evaluated without any actual data inside them.
They will. There are, if someone were to go ahead and propose using publicly available data, using proxy data, basically the long and short of it is that it will essentially be evaluated based on the scientific merit, and in some cases, proxy data or other data may have to be used for illustrative purposes.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that, because then you can't be dinged on your proposal for not using the data yet, as long as you have some other illustrating that you can do what you're proposing to.
Yes, and that would absolutely be something that would be pointed out to the reviewers, is that in the interest of equity and fair and accessibility and being nobody should be at an advantage because for some reason they have access to data that's effectively proprietary in this sense, right? So that would, yes, your point is absolutely understood and has been considered, which is that some people may be able to use the data in their proposal, but some people may be limited to test data sets or something that's fundamentally different than the processing data that's available, and that's just the nature of living in this restricted data environment. But it is something that, is understood and considered, and in fact will likely be simply directed as part of the evaluation process. All right, Larry?
Thanks, Will, for your review. You mentioned that we could have an opportunity to task the satellites to get new data. In doing that, we would have to have the vendors to be on board with this. So in formulating the proposal, do we have to essentially get a letter of support from the vendor to agree that they would task the satellite in a manner needed to achieve the goals of the proposal?
You should work, and the primary point of tasking would be on the Maxar satellites. You should work with basically communicate with CSDA you can email me, but I can tell you I'm going to point you to the project office at Goddard for clarity on exactly how tasking works. I know there is some level of tasking that is available to be done, but that tasking is done essentially through the NextView license, which is through the data that is actually acquired under NGA. So it's I think a pretty low priority background tasking. So I would suggest you work with reach out to the data teams and again, I can point you in the right direction as well, but ensure that you just kind of have an understanding of how the tasking effectively works. If it's not something that you have right, but the fact of the matter is that the tasking is even handled through a different route and not direct with the vendor, if that makes sense. Probably not, but yeah, basically, so the way the NextView licensing has always worked is that tasking and everything goes through Goddard, which then basically can help establish the tasking request, but the tasking request is at a very low priority. So it can be, in some sense, in some cases, difficult to get specific tasking if it's in an area where certain instruments are, highly, basically tasked with higher priority around the clock. And that's where it kind of comes down to an individualized issue. And again, something I've never fully worked with the tasking of the Maxar satellites. So that's where I would really recommend reaching out to CSDA at a support level, again, through the project office at Goddard to get more clarity in terms of how that works.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So it was for I was thinking of the Maxar data set. So, okay, I'll do that. Thanks.
Elfrida, did you want to add anything? So Elfrida Hall's on as well. He's the project manager.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah, work through the CSDA website and you'll see the access to that, because right now everything is all under CSDA now. So the data team that handles all of the data is also handling any of the Maxar requests.
Right. I guess the when developing a proposal, as at least when I review proposals, I got to we review whether it's doable. And whenever you're asking, in this particular case, for Maxar to task one of their satellites to do a specific collection, as a reviewer, I would want to know that they are on board with that collection strategy and have signed up to it. And I don't know. Would they sign up to it without actually reading what the proposal is? So we're in this, catch-22 situation here.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying. Only thing basically we can say is, we can look at the areas. If it's going to be a specific thing, we can't really say that, but we do know what data we do have access to. Through that list of data there, and it's basically, how you can temporarily look at it, which we have done that in the past. But as Will mentioned, any kind of tasking through this license, we could put a request in. Again, it will be prioritized based on the requirements coming in, and it will have a time, that you may not get it in time that you may need it. But you can at least get a range from the different instruments and the time scale, the time frame of the data that we have to have access to it.
Right. But a letter of collaboration from Maxar wouldn't be expected for the proposal.
No.
As long as we put in something within the proposal, something that's reasonable, that comes off as low priority, that has a lot of flexibility in it, that seems doable based on their historic collection for scientific research. It would be appropriate then just to mention that that Maxar's used to doing these types of things. We understand the low priority nature, and that we will, rather than request a letter from Maxar, we would simply say we would work with Maxar in putting in these requests.
So yeah, you actually be working with the the CSDA team will be doing that on behalf of the researchers.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
For any researcher.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Danielle?
Hi, Will and et al. Thank you very much for the information. My question is, what is the expected response time for the step 1 proposals?
Yeah, my aspiration is to get those done effectively. It's like 2 weeks and a couple days. It's there's like my target is I think that 18th is a Thursday, if I remember correctly. It might be a Wednesday. I know we kind of went back and forth, but essentially 2 weeks after the following Monday. So essentially 2.5 weeks later is the timeline that I'm targeting. And I have already begun the process of giving all the program managers at headquarters the heads up that this is the process we're going with, and the turnaround time is anticipated to be fairly quick.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Nick Presscamp.
Hey, yeah, thank you. Just a quick question. We have a number of different researchers who are interested in potentially putting in proposals. Is there any limit to a number of proposals from a single organization? I'm a nonprofit, not academic, so that's part of why we wanted to clarify.
There are no restrictions beyond any restrictions that would exist for a normal ROSES proposal. So to the best of my understanding, I mean, we certainly get multiple proposals from single institutions all the time. There's nothing out of the ordinary on that.
Right, understood. Okay, I just wanted to, thank you.
But again, I am always superseded by any official regulation that may exist that I am not aware of. But generally speaking, yeah, I've never heard of any limitations based on organization.
Yeah, right, okay.
Suzanne.
Yeah, well, thank you, Will. Just a really simple question too. So I saw the budgets for the program, the first year is 3.2 million, and the award duration is 2 years. Is that means like each year you're gonna, so in total for 2 years you have 6.4 million for the program, or how we interpret it there?
Right, yeah. So you should be writing your proposal, on the order of, basically that 3.2 is per year. So for each year I have 3.2 million. So if you do the math, it comes out to roughly $100K, $150,000 to $200,000 per year.
Per year, okay.
Yeah.
So if we propose a 2 years project, then you just budget that for the 2 years, basically.
Exactly, right.
Okay. A second question is, so for the, is there any cost share requirement?
No, there are no cost share requirements.
Okay. And if we are being funded by the CSDA program, and then we can use we have access to the satellite image, right? And because I saw, like, for example, some of them, like authorized user is U.S. federal civil agency.
Yeah.
But that's including NASA, I guess, right? So if
right, it's always government. It's funded agencies and their funded research. So if you are selected by this call and fundamentally funded by us, then you're inherently going to be applicable for all of the EULAs.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
Yep. Pietro?
Yeah. So I have two questions. One is that do we need to specify, like, or check the dataset availability before in step 1 proposal? And what I read something on the text, so I was just wondering, do we have to specify, like, that we check the archive, we know there are data? How does that work out?
Within reason. I think it's always good to know, especially with some of these more sparse data sets, if you have the ability to illustrate that there is data availability, I think that is a very useful and will certainly be strengthen your proposal. To call it an explicit requirement, there's always a little bit of leeway in terms of, it's not listed as an explicit requirement. So no, it's not an explicit requirement, I guess, is the fundamental way to put it.
Okay, thank you. And the other question is, can we also use other supporting data sets for our proposal that we are authorized to use? And if that's like a limiting factor, if you see that as a limiting factor or actually something that could make the proposal better.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that outside of the data set specific to the CSDA holdings, anything that would be applicable in a different, in a standard ROSES proposal would be applicable here in terms of other data sets used and compared against and leveraged. I don't think there's any specific restrictions or limitations that go along with this versus any other ROSES element.
Okay, thank you.
You think?
Yes, I also have two questions. First is, I know you mentioned there will be no individual feedback given back to the step one proposal. So does that mean there is only going to be like encouraged and no encouraged as the responses? Or like, is there going to be like, for example, how much you scored on a scale of 10 or 5, something like that?
No, it is simply you will simply receive the score of discouraged and encouraged.
Okay,
there will be no narrative to go with why that score was chosen.
Okay, great. And the second question is, it was mentioned in a call that for proposals requesting NASA high-end computing resources. So I'm wondering, let's say if I'm going to do a large-scale study, I will need some high-end computing resources. Am I suggested to use NASA's high-end computing resources, or I can also use it from my university?
You don't have to use NASA's high-end computing resources. It's just available to you essentially with a little extra work and in fact, it's available for any funded ROSES proposal. So it's just an extra bit of paperwork you have to do as if you choose to use high-end computing along with your research.
Okay. Yeah, I guess my question is like, if we choose to use NASA's computing resources, will that make the process easier since you guys already have the data?
It depends because the CSDA data does not fully live on the same, basically on the supercomputers at Goddard or at Ames. A lot of the commercial data exists on AWS. So it's, with some exceptions that are very nuanced, it's not necessarily going to give you a huge advantage to use high-end computing.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you.
Nick?
Yeah, so this is a question around the budget. So to clarify, it sounds like from the solicitation, there's no budget materials needed until the step 2 proposal. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then the second question is that since we're kind of starting off with like back of the napkin calculations based on the expected budget and the number of awards anticipated, do you have any guidance on how to target an appropriately sized budget, or is there some wiggle room in after award negotiations for pinning down a final number for these?
Generally speaking, you at step 2 you will submit an institutionally approved budget, and that budget should reflect what your final ask is. It's not to say that sometimes there isn't negotiation after the fact. Usually it's downward, not upwards, but it has happened upwards for various reasons. But fundamentally, you should be providing a budget that really maps out essentially the labor and resources and supplies, et cetera, and overheads needed for that proposal. And if you read if you get into the NASA's proposers guidebook, it'll give a lot more detail in terms of what specifics the budget should contain. But long and short of it is that generally the final number on that budget tends to be pretty close to the final number that ends up going out.
Understood. So I'm just trying to understand, like, shoot for that average value based on the number of awards and the total budget.
Yes, acknowledging that part of the evaluation process at step 2 is usually is cost. So you want to make sure that the work proposed also lines up with the labor being proposed as well.
Right. Okay. Great. Thank you.
Jennifer?
Thanks, Will. Just going to ask the same question again, because I am concerned with, access of everyone to be able to write a proposal that's competitive.
Mm-hmm.
And with the data access limited, then just wanted to confirm, because it seems to me that in your answer to Pietro Milio, and I'm not sure which data set that he was concerned with, but it seemed to me that you answered him to say that, yes, it's worthwhile to go and look at the availability of data and include that in your proposal, because that would be a positive in the evaluation. And so just wanted to
Yeah, I see.
Make sure that you're very clear here on whether people are at a disadvantage in the evaluation of their proposal if they don't already have access.
Fair
and
point.
How can you make that clear to everyone?
Yeah, I see your point. I think that there are, in many cases, ways to see if there's data available or not. And I was thinking more in terms, and again, availability. It's going to depend by project, but generally speaking, the existence of data is not necessarily the same as access to the data. If you understand, if you see what I'm saying, and acknowledging that all different data sets are also, there's a lot of difference between the availability of spatial data versus the like planets on and available, and always kind of available, while radio occultation tends to be more sporadic, and so availability is a bit of a different nuance.
I guess I would make a suggestion, and that is that if there's a data set, I mean, you're looking to solicit proposals to use Spire data, for example, and if there's a data set that's accessible to everyone that's been previously released, that you could point them to that, so that at least everybody knows that they have open access to some subset of the data. And it seems to me that Spire has made data available to the broader community.
Right.
But then
yeah, there are. I mean, there are.
But so the thing is, people need the link to that data set where they don't have to go through CSDA if they can't get authorization.
Right. So there are, like I said, there are publicly available. There are sample data sets. There is all the data that's been purchased by NOAA is readily available. There are nuances behind all of this. But to say that, so there are, the ability to use existing data is there with enough homework. But at the same time, CSDA is also willing and able to, within reason, provide some level of support as well to things, to figuring out basically what kind of information can we provide if someone is fundamentally not eligible to touch the data. And for that case as well, I would say reach out to us as program management, and we could get the project office to help support as well.
Okay. Thank you very much for going to that effort to make that information available, and it would be good to make sure that that's available to everyone.
Mm-hmm. Jen Yao?
Hi, so thank you for the information. For the Spire data, do you provide the original onboard GSS receiver measurement data? So because I noticed that you provide the POD data for Spire, but how we may want to redo the POD processing by ourselves. So I'm wondering if you have the original GSS receiver data.
Yeah, we have for the radio occultation, it's really level 1A and the open GNS type formats, similar to the CDAC cosmic processing. So level 1 upwards. So there's level 1 type products, and as well as up to level 2 bending angle and refractometry measurements.
Okay, sounds great. Yeah, thank you.
Jeffrey Hickey?
Hi, yes, thanks for the overview, Will. I had a question about the availability of data in general, well, in general and in specific. I'm on the SDX site, and I see that the planet data is available includes the SkySat imagery, but I'm on the planet website on their CSDA FAQ, and it says SkySat's not available. So,
right.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, so SkySat was some SkySat data has been purchased, and in fact was purchased as part of the evaluation for the original evaluation of Planet. But basically and that data exists under existing basically proper licensing. But it's only the data that has basically been purchased up until this point. So there is no basically ability for SkySat specifically to buy new data. It's only the data that we have on SDX, which is data we had purchased for previous purposes. So it's available, but only available for what we've bought, while the Planet Scope is basically readily available through the Planet website.
Okay, thanks. That answers one question. Quick other question is this list complete on the SDX site? In other words, are some of Planet's newer products available as well?
The table is, for all intents and purposes, complete as far as I'm aware. I mean, I know Planet, I think, has some other more advanced products that are not part of it. It's really just the standard products that are available.
Okay, thank you.
Hazi Usama?
Yeah, is there an upper allowed amount for the award? So the total amount and the number of awards give us like the average value. Is there
it gives you a rough bounding box. That is not to say if a proposal exceeds that and is programmatically very important and scores very well, that you're not fundamentally limited by 3.2 million divided by 17 and 3.2 million divided by 22. But there is, it's within reason as well. So there's nothing explicitly stopping you from proposing a much larger award than that, but it would have to make a strong case to get outside of the expected number of awards.
Okay, thank you.
See, was there any more hands up? Suzanne?
Yeah, hey Will, one more question is, so the proposals will be evaluated for the phase 1, for the step 1 proposal, are they going to be evaluated based on the focus areas or just across the board?
No, so it's a combination of both. It'll be evaluated by the focus areas. The evaluation will be done through focus area leads and programmatic leads and representation from there. That said, there is some expectation of we have to see how many come in to see how many we go from there. But fundamentally, the evaluation is fundamentally programmatic and scientific by the program leads at that point. So there's some expectation that things should scale, in a nominal sense, roughly with what comes in. But it's a little bit. It's just it's non-binding in the sense, though. We know certain focus areas are probably going to have higher subscription rates just by the nature of the observations. We're not necessarily at the step 1 doing an explicit balancing of what we fund. That would come more explicitly at the second area, but we will be aware of how many things are funded or how many things are we just step 1 does give us an estimate of how subscribed we are in certain regions, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
I thought, let's see, there was a question in the chat. As far as is there a programmatic preference on the spatial domain of the proposed project? Does the study have to be performed over a large spatial domain? In other words, would studies proposed at ecological sites be responsive to the study, to the solicitation? There is no preference beyond existing programmatic preferences of the focus areas and applied sciences programs. So basically that's what you need to tailor your programmatic relevance towards, is the existing and established programmatic strategy that exists for all these focus areas. Bob Knudsen, how can we browse the data holdings without prior authorization? Again, there are some freely available things, and you can also potentially work with CSDA to reach out, because it may be that you can see the whole see spatial information without actually getting to the point of getting access to data. We'll have to work with you specifically on that. Is there another hand up? Jan Yao, did you have another question? I'm sorry.
No, I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, I've already asked.
All right. With that, I'm not seeing any more questions unless I'm missing them. Oh, can a postdoc be PI or co-PI on this project? I have no restrictions, and there are no restrictions really beyond standard NASA restrictions. There's no career stage requirements for this. So you answered that. Upper allow, yeah, no top end limit within reason. Amir Milibari, regarding your GNSS reflectometry per spire, they do provide some documentation. I'm not explicitly sure the answer to that question, but they are contractually required to provide some level of support. So you are free to reach out to them, and if it's something that's not in the standard data files, if it's something they produce, then you should be able to get that documentation from them. Ian Chang, can we develop level 2 products from level 1 radiance data? You should read the EULA. There's essentially narrative discussion and text in there regarding value-added products versus derived products. Essentially, you can create products either way, but if the product can still reproduce the original restricted data, then that product is fundamentally restricted under the same terms of the EULA. If it is a derived product in the sense that it cannot reproduce the original data, then that data is no longer constricted to the EULA. And so derived products can be distributed freely. Into that. All right, I think that's all the yeah, Minchen, that's really as far as the domain. Again, that's more of a thing you need to look at each programmatic focus area and determine how they function. I guess is the long and short. Each different focus area and each program has different programs have different kind of stances and strategies in terms of region, large versus small regions. All right, with that, it's 2:01. I don't see any new hands or new questions. I appreciate everyone for coming. Good luck with the solicitation should you choose to propose. And this is being recorded, as I had mentioned, and will be posted on a public sharing mechanism of sort that will be linked to from the NSpires page. So again, thank you very much. Everyone have a nice rest of your day. Thank you.